name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
And now it is my pleasure to welcome to the podium the very person I just spoke of, Frank, to now have a bit of a discussion, a panel discussion about how to start a business, and to do that together with his colleagues in the Black Business Alliance. Frank Dixon, ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a big hand.
Thank you, Harold. We did put on the program, starting a business and some business planning techniques. That was done because we were anticipating, more of a millennial crowd and future entrepreneurs and things of that nature. But the talent and experience in the room now, we're going to adjust that a little bit. So what we're going to do is for about 5 minutes, I want to bring up my colleague and the founder of the Black Business Alliance, Howard Hill, and I'm going to take this time to name drop my organization, right? We're going to do that. So Howard's going to come up and just talk briefly about his passion and our passion, who we are. I know you've heard it from me over the past couple of days, but Howard and I used to sit around and talk about, what's the underlying issue for our community and the African American community here. And, Root calls it as economics, which could probably cure a lot of our woes, right? Some of our challenges. So, we start brainstorming, and, I came on board to get the organization up and going through his guidance and resources. So he's just going to come up and talk a little bit about his vision and what we're doing with the BBA and why we are here. And then after that, Ms. Menefee, our board member and organizational planner for the organization, is going to go through the business and planning piece, catering to the seasoned audience that's in the room. Okay, can we do that? So Howard, if you want to come up for a second and talk to this amazing group of people about, how we started the Black Business Alliance venture back in the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you all for being here and sharing with us, along with your desires to build more capacity in your countries. Thank you for allowing us to co-sponsor with the group, the illustrious group here. But I just want to talk real briefly about BBA and why BBA. So we got into a sort of a discussion during lunchtime about some of the issues that impact the Black community, African American Black community. But I use this broad umbrella of Black because, in my personal belief, in America it is about Black and white. Although you may hear that things are becoming more diverse, I do believe that as well. But there still tends to be this issue that African American, specifically Black people, experience. And it's really systemic oppression, right? When we have, I've talked to a lot of folks that have come from other countries, and they talk about the African American person. I'm not sure if they quite understand what it feels like to be oppressed, which has been going on for so very long. And economically, to be oppressed economically strips you of your self dignity, and it tends to perpetuate itself. So we decided, as Frank said, we decided to try to talk about, to deal with this issue of oppression from an economic standpoint, since we live in a country that is based on capitalism. It's about the money. I believe that once you get to a certain wealth limit, there is the color barrier tends to gray more, and it tends not to be so pronounced. So we wanted to figure out a way where we can inspire our community to do better and use the vehicle of entrepreneurship or collective economics, use that as a mode in order to lift the community out of the state that it's in, versus relying on others to require that they help us. And that's an African American narrative. It's not necessarily an African narrative, but it's an African American narrative. And I hope you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. But we have some unique issues. I'm really loving this because I've always wanted to go to Africa, and now I think I have an opportunity to go and actually do some business. Yeah, and I think that it's I feel like there's this movement going on where the African diaspora, we're sort of starting to kind of spread our tentacles out and try to reach back and pull ourselves back together, so to speak, right? Since we've been divided in so many different ways. So I feel really, really, really good about this. I'm proud of the Black Business Alliance. I'm proud of the work that Frank is doing, and Guiliane, and all of the other board members. I'm extremely proud of that because the Black Business Alliance is actually a strategic arm of another organization that we started, which is called the Prosperity Foundation. Prosperity Foundation is a community-based foundation. It's an endowment-based foundation. So if you know how, we'll say, the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven works, or if you know how the Hartford Foundation works, then you'll know what the the Prosperity Foundation, how that works. The Prosperity Foundation is laser focused on what's good for the Black community. We focus in the areas of health, economics, and education, which are three major issues that we feel impact our community more so than anything else, or their root causes. So I won't go on anymore. I just want to kind of give you an overview, and this is a very, very tamped down version of why the Black Business Alliance. I realize that there's other speakers coming behind us, and Guiliane is going to, and Frank are going to go through the all of this, the strategic way in which we go about creating and sustaining Black business in the state of Connecticut. So thank you all.
I just want to interject that, looking like me, I have a T-shirt that says on the back of it, "I'm so proud of my African heritage." And people kind of look, but my roots are in Africa, even though I have a Swedish accent. So even those blanched people, you never know what their heritage is. Please, take it over.
No, you can take this.
Sure? Yeah. I thought we were going to have a dialogue here. Okay, we're going to have a dialogue across the room. Hello, everybody, again. Guiliane Menefee, board member of Black Business Alliance. And as Howard alluded to, as one of our strategic initiatives, missions within the organization, whether it's from top down, TPF, or Black Business Alliance, and what we've seen as the theme here for this weekend, access to capital. As we all know, the sustainability of all of our communities, for whatever type of initiative we're talking about, goes back to the economic awareness, education, and development of our community. So one of the legs that we want to do into the African American community, minority community in general, is help them to understand how to start their business, how to run their business, how to keep it going so that they not only themselves sustain their own business, but as well be able to be an asset to the community, also be a mentor, be a guide, be a leader, so that it can continue that cycle and continue to produce economic leaders, business leaders, that will eventually be that butterfly effect that we need so that we can continue growing. So like Frank said, this presentation here was a little bit on the tactical side. It was a little bit more of exactly how to think about the things that helps you to start your business, the considerations, and kind of some of the tactical and strategic plans, kind of moves that you want to do that. So I think we're going to wing this a little bit differently, however, have some information in the background for you so that you can understand some of the ways that we help and teach our future business leaders how to think about their business. So again, I'm going to bounce back and forth here, but in the backdrop here, we talk about your plan for the plan, right? So I actually have a saying in my own firm where I quote Benjamin Franklin, who says, you don't plan to fail, you fail to plan, right? And so that is a general theme that we want to impart on our community to make sure that you go into your business wide open. However, more tactically and just awareness perspective, and that's one of the things that the Black Business Alliance wants to do is say, okay, here are the things that you need to know about starting your business, but let us help you understand the resources that are out there so you're aware of all the things that you have at your fingertips so that you can put a good business plan together. And so I think one of the things, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but MBRLF is one of the initiatives that the Black Business Alliance is pairing with the state of Connecticut. And it's a program especially for communities that are underserved and that are unserved. And so the Minority Business Revolving Loan Fund is, I think it's about $25 million inventory or pot for the state, in which its purpose and its target is the Black community. So what BBA is charged to do in pairing with the state is to make folks aware that this type of program is available for them. Some of the criteria around it: 3 years in business, at least a year in business where you've been operational, but they want to see that you have some experience in your trade, in your field, that you are looking to expand. It's industry agnostic, so it's not targeted for one business type or another. They do a loose check to just ensure that your monies aren't tied up with child support or any tax liens. We have those problems in our communities, but the state wants to make sure, I want to give you $100K. They want to give you the money, but they also want to make sure it's not going somewhere else. They want to make sure it's going to go into your business. But that's real, right? So they want to check that. Well, let me tell you about how BBA comes into play. So BBA has a strategic partnership, actually, with 2 other organizations. So it's a 3-prong approach. The life cycle of the whole program is to become aware of it, become an applicant, fill out the paperwork, get to understand then what your business needs, which pairs very well with the BBA and its natural and organic services, which I'll talk about a little bit more. And then BBA is going to get your ducks in a row for you. So a lot of folks may have these resources available to them, but they really don't know what does it take to actually be a good candidate, right? What does good look like for you to have success? Outside of what does good look like so you can do well in your business, what does good like so you can be a good applicant for the program? And so BBA is gonna kind of package you up and get your tie straightened out and your buttons together, and you're going to then march through to the second phase of the program, which is the pre-qualification. That's an organization, SAMA, and Frank. Okay, thank you. And so they are going to help with the pre-qualification, which is to pull all of the your whole profile together, and then they're going to move you on to HEDCO, which is the loan funding arm of the program, and they are the ones who actually are going to underwrite and then provide you the funds. BBA loves this initiative because it really speaks to one of the things that plagues a lot of our African American communities here. It's the awareness of programs that are available. If you think about it, like we talked about yesterday with access to capital, the big banks aren't necessarily here to give out money to the small businesses. Sometimes it feels like, unfortunately, and I think it's the reality, that the big banks aren't really necessarily our friends, if you will, right? So how do we make sure that we can do something about it so that our small businesses are aware and they can continue having resources, having access to capital? So as we know, of course, those are some of the things that we talk about with the money aspect. And so this program is going to be there for these businesses to ensure that they can have a means to continue sustaining their business. So now I'm going to go a little bit back to this. So we talk about what's in a business plan. And so one of the things that BBA does as part of our natural services that are organic to our organization is assessing our businesses and making sure that they're aware of their position within their markets, within their industries. So when we talk about the business plan fundamentally has 3 parts, as most of you know already. So we talk about your executive summary, we talk about the operational model and plan, so how do you set up your infrastructure, and then we talk about the financials, which is a big key and theme to our conference this weekend. So this is a kind of high-level checklist that we do with our businesses, and we talk to them about, do you understand your executive summary, and do you understand yourself? Do you understand what problem you're solving, right? So where does your business serve the community? The value proposition, we talk about this in terms of what value are you giving to your community? What is the benefit for me to engage with you? Your mission statement, this is a little bit more at the company level, right? What is the purpose of your company? Your solution, what is the solution that you're providing? Your competitors in the industry, one of the top reasons that there's top 3 reasons why most businesses fail in year 1 or year 3, and one of them is around innovation. So innovation speaks to market research and data, that you know you're coming into a competition, into an industry, and you know who the players are, right? So you know, first of all, who your direct competitors are. Who are people who can do the same thing that you do? They can do it a little bit differently. They can maybe do it better, maybe not as good as you, but who are they? Or who lends themselves to you such that if they don't want to take on the service that you do have, there's an alternative way of getting to the same results, and they still pose a threat to you. So understanding who are all of those people who could compete against the service you have, and then of course understanding who you are as a person, as a CEO, kind of to how Howard described what was the impetus for forming BBA. Same thing with you. At the end of the day, we all know that people really fall in love first with you as the person who's representing your organization. You're the first impression that people have of your organization. And so your passion is going to be what makes people follow. and they're going to say, I want to know a little bit more about what product or service you have to offer. And so that has to come out. Why are you doing this, right? What keeps you up at night? What problems are you solving? Why does that matter to you? And then, of course, about the company, about us, the collective we. So the company itself is also going to collectively stand for something. And what do people know about it? I think with this here, to kind of flip it a little bit more general and higher about now we talking about, well, I'm going to get these things in a row. I'm going to understand who I am and what do I mean to everyone. If we think about the considerations for doing business in Connecticut, and I probably need Frank, I want Frank to help me a little bit with this portion, but we talk about putting the business plan together, and so somebody's ready to go, but not just yet, right? Because it's a little bit more than you as the company, right? Doing business in the United States, and of course doing business internationally, it has impacts. It has compliance, it has red tape. There's things that you can or can't do depending on the state that you're in, or depending even on the industry or the service that you provide. And I think Frank, come up here and help me with this portion of the conversation. Folks are getting ready to go. Thank you. And Frank can tell you a little bit more about some of his background, and I think you'll understand why I'm partnering with him on this portion, because I think he's going to be one of the best resources you'll find when it comes to how do I think about doing business. I'll even start in Connecticut, and then we'll broaden that nationally and internationally. Frank is a guy of many resources. I tell him he's involved with just too much. Probably sits on 50 boards himself, but just a wealth of knowledge, and I've come to learn so much from him working alongside with him. But I think we're gonna have an engaging conversation about this, but when you think about a business that's ready to go and they think, hey, I've done those things, Guiliane, and I know who I am, I know what value, what's the benefit for me to do business in this state, or to give you the service that you want. I know who my competitors are, and I found a way to make myself unique, and I'm gonna have that unique factor that's gonna make me stand out. And you can feel my passion, you can tell why I'm just the best thing since sliced bread. But what are some of those things that are just not yet from the starting line? What is gonna stop somebody from really doing business if they're not prepared with some of these other considerations?
Thanks, Guiliane. So the first thing I think you should do is join the Black Business Alliance. No, I'm just kidding. So you know what? We come across so many different businesses because just my background as a business consultant and from a commercial side and the public sector side and helping businesses get up and grow. So, you know, we do have a diverse group of businesses who have been in business for a while, who want to start, and they will come to us at the Black Business Alliance or as a consultant and say, I am ready, I am doing this, I'm registered, I have certain socioeconomic certifications, I have a business plan I just paid somebody $2,000 for to help me put together, but they lack the knowledge of the state of Connecticut. How do I do business in the state of Connecticut, right? What's the industry like? What's the politics like? You know, what are the logistics in my industry? Who's getting all the contract and who's the leader of my type of business, service, and products in the state? Those type things are usually what the new business or the business who just can't go above a certain revenue level usually lack. They don't understand the dynamics of the state that they're living in. And a lot of times if they've done a lot of research and they are maxed out, I advise them, why are we not in Massachusetts? Why are we not in New York? Why are we not in Washington, D.C.? Why are you not making some trips to Maryland? You know, which state is actually buying your products and services and goods? Which states are a little bit more friendly to minority businesses? Do that kind of follow-on research. And that's usually where we are with businesses who have been in business for a while, businesses that can't go above that next level of revenue because they're maxed out. And they do need to come and bring in subject matter experts like the Black Business Alliance to assist them with that, right? Because you could be a general contractor, or you could sell medical supplies, but at the end of the day, if you don't know how to maneuver your way into the hospitals, or if you don't know how to network your way into the prime contractors, especially in this state, where it seems like the 1% always gets those same major deals, right? How do you get in the door to see these guys? And what we usually advise is, where do these guys hang out, right? Where do they hang out? Where do they eat? Where do they golf? Where do they socialize? What kind of trade shows do they attend? That's what we're looking at. And that's usually how we advise the businesses that tend to have maxed out, and the ones that are looking to take their margin, increase their margin to the next level, right? And that's something that's learned through associations, networking events, commonality of industry, and we tend to break it down extremely simple, especially from the entrepreneurial side. I'll go back that way. I might know how to cook an egg, and I'm going to use something Guiliane says all the time, but I'll bring it more North Carolina, where I'm from, instead of West India. So, West Indies. So I might know how to cook an egg, but I want to go start me a restaurant. But if I don't understand the industry of flour and eggs, and how in 6 months is going to change the cost, what the weather is like, and how it's going to impact my business, and all the other outlying categories that is going to cause my prices to change, and how my price is going to change is going to affect the current client base that I have. And why do I have that client base? Is it because of the quality of my food or my prices, or because of both? Those type things play a part. Because you have a business doesn't mean you're in business. Because you give the state of Connecticut $125 to register your business and get a tax ID number, that doesn't mean that you're actually in business. And we focus on that from the Black Business Alliance perspective to help you understand from a 360-degree aspect of getting your business registered, getting you into the business, understanding your industry, putting you in front of people who are making the decisions to grow your business, and collectively, shop within our communications, within our alliance, and we grow it together. So those are the type things that we bring because of our experiences as consultants, and consultants from the government side and from the commercial side and from our financial team, where we have CPAs and tax accountants and all those different things.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
So I thought you were going in one direction, but I like what you covered so far. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. And when he talked about, so the example I use is, just because you know how to make curry chicken, it doesn't mean you open a Jamaican restaurant. So one of the things that I think is very important, when that last point here where I say about you, about us, it is not just about the positive and where you shine, and like the expression I use, how you're the best thing since sliced bread. Okay, you're not good at everything. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people don't understand how to be strategic. Like I feel I think about my engagement with Frank. So I think one of the things that was so helpful about my alliance with the BBA, or just getting to know Frank and us exchanging from each other, is that we complement each other in the areas where we're not so strong. And one of the things that a lot of us don't do is to talk about the areas that we're not so strong, where we have weaknesses, our Achilles heels. Because in Connecticut, to do business well, you need to have resources where you're not so good, where your business doesn't have core competencies. outsource. You know, understand where your time is the most valuable and where it's not so much, and get somebody perhaps that is actually not in your company. Sometimes it is better to have an outsource model on certain areas of your business. And I think where you'll find so valuable about the BBA is that they've positioned themselves, we've positioned ourselves to have those affiliations with so many organizations in Connecticut. And this is why we have a system that's efficient with bringing a business in, quickly assessing them, using data so that we can say, here is how you're scoring. Here is what your scorecard for your business model looks like. Here are the areas you do well. Here is where you're not positioned so hot. And in those not so hot areas, let's help you find somebody who can help you and supplement and fill that gap. Frank has the government down cold to a certain extent, and he's been able to open my mind as to, hey, Guiliane, you're an African-American woman, and do you know there's certifications out there for women-owned businesses, for economically disadvantaged women-owned businesses, and all these nuances. I'm like, I didn't know that they did that, right? Whereas perhaps in one of the areas that I help fill the void with Frank is helping him see his impact with the decisions that he makes from an organization perspective, because that's my background. But we don't look at each other as know-it-alls, right? We look at each other from a respectful manner of saying, hey, you have some knowledge that I don't have, and let me tap your brain a little bit more. And I think that it's one of the mentalities and mindsets that we need to promote within our communities to make people aware. Let's level set how your business is, where you're at right now, and where you need resources, and let us help you fill those gaps.
And I think that's one of the key elements that we have to focus on. In our community, we tend to want to take a shortcut to growing our business, right? Well, let me go talk to Frank for 5 minutes. And even though Frank's been assistant or Menefee associate consultants have been providing consulting services for a lot of years, I'll talk to him for 5 minutes, and I'm going to know how to go out and do this for my business, right? And we tend to do that, and and those are some of the things that Howard spoke about that we have to come to grips with ourselves, is that we don't know it all. There's a reason that we feel the need. We don't understand how to position our resources in the appropriate manner, right? I've had businesses where they want to come to me on the private side, and you'd give them an invoice of what this would look like to help them out. They'd say, "Oh no, we'll look at it," but then they might go out and buy, a $3,000 computer they don't really know how to turn on, right? So you have to make people understand, and businesses understand, what you need and how important this trivial amount of money is to help you succeed down the line is going to be more beneficial than buying something that someone told you about that don't really have that expertise, right? So when we do focus groups around the state, we talk about that. We just don't talk about, the network of businesses and how to grow your business. We talk about what are the legacy psychological challenges that's impacted our community, and why. Why do we think the way we think from an African American standpoint? And then when you understand why you think the way you think, based on some of the things that Howard spoke about on our plight in this country, then that plays a part in the way we think, the way we do business, or the way we don't do business, or why our business community is the way it is. So we talk about all those things in some of our focus groups that we have around the state, where we galvanize individuals from all walks of life, and we have think tanks. What do you think the challenges are in our community? We bring together business leaders, clergy, educators, students, and then that helps the Black Business Alliance with where we need to go, right? Because we don't know it all. We need to know what you're thinking from the community. And as when we gather that data, then it helps us strategically put together how we're going to approach this community. or your community. And we start local, right? Because the challenges in New Haven might not be the same challenges in Hartford. The challenges in Dallas might not be the same challenges in Columbus, Georgia, right? So we look at it from that standpoint.
What else? I think that one of the things that we have talked about with our communities as well is the importance of relationships. So those resources and establishing those affiliations and associations is around the relationships that we have. And regardless if you're selling, you know, a thumbnail, a thumbtack, a pencil, or business consulting services like myself, at the end of the day, you have to build relationships. And those are the types of things you don't find that in a business plan. And I'm not sure if it's something that we fundamentally even talk to our students about in high school or in college, right? There's no course on how to build relationships, but it's a fundamental thread. The world is small, but the world is big as well. And we know, and BBA has positioned itself exactly for that reason, is that it's who you know, not what you know. I have a saying where I also teach business owners and say, get paid for what you do, for what you know, not what you do. And these are some of the things that will differentiate you, right? So, you know, folks are going to work with me because they know I have something here that I can impart on them and to help position their business. But at the end of the day, if I don't establish trust, if I don't establish a relationship with them, then I'm not going to win them over. They're not going to want to confide in me. Businesses give us very confidential information so that I can help and understand their business. This is how I have to understand their businesses, know their data. But they're not going to do any of that. They're not going to engage with me if they don't have trust. And so trust, yes, is a business fundamental, but we also then, when we talk about the mindset, and this is one of the biggest drivers, and I had a slide up earlier that I can go back to. One of the things that, and I want Frank to speak to this a bit, is the trust within our community. One of the things around our focus groups that we've pulled out some honest conversations with those that attend those focus groups is talking about, well, why don't you do business in the African American community? And it kind of always goes back to that same theme around trust and around the service levels that people sometimes anticipate and have, unfortunately, low expectations, right? And those are the types of vicious cycles that we want to break within the communities and help them to understand we have to do better for ourselves and to ourselves, okay? And we can't sit here and because it's another person who looks like us, that should make us say, well, I got to treat my people the best. I want to do the best because this person looks like me. And we have the whole world, for the most part, that puts us at the bottom of the totem pole sometimes, right? And it's unfortunate, but it is where we are sometimes. And making us aware, like we talked about, those unconscious and conscious biases. And for us to do better for ourselves and to think that we are just as valuable. That's right. That's the one I was going to. We are just as valuable, maybe more so. We had a very powerful speaker. Her name was Maggie Anderson. We had this event in February of 2017. And she had an experiment that she did in her hometown of Chicago, where for 1 year, she bought black only. And it was documented. She talked about the very powerful story of during that time, how she got harassed, her kids got bullied at school, but she did this experiment, and she talked about the impacts of, one, where she was, from a geographic perspective, there was some challenges and constraints, but she talked about how she had to kind of dig sometimes very deep to find some of the products and services that she was looking for, that she was specifically, again, going after an African American owned business to get that product or service. And then she talked about the research and the data that she did. And one of the most powerful ones that she talked about with me that it stays with me forever and I tell people about was, I didn't know, so she talked about the company that makes Hennessy. And she said, do you know that 85% of all their customers are black? Do you know that there's nobody in management that's an African American that's in that company? Not one. And those are the types of things like, guys, the African American community, for instance, we contribute to the hair industry, $1 billion. There is so much wealth within our community, and we don't know how to sustain it. We don't know how to use it to empower ourselves. And so trust is such a big deal for us. And it has more to do with that bottom line and getting your customers to trust you. We need to trust ourselves. Those folks that do look like us, it is okay, but we need to know how to do business with each other. We need to know how to trust ourselves, to trust each other, to collaborate, to partner with each other, so that we can continue building this community. And Frank, I know you could talk a little bit more even from the BBA stance of some of the particulars around trust.
All right, thanks, Guiliane. So I'm going to close this segment out, and it's going to be just an overview of the conversations that Howard and I had back in the day, and this sums it up here, right? You know, we talked about, you know, our plight in this country, the African American plight in this country, and why we are the way we are, because we lost something, right? Something was systematically taken, right? And that's this right here, trust, right? So once you systematically go after a community and you segregate it and you demoralize it and you break the community apart, you know, you lose the trust. So, and that plays a part when we're trading, when we're doing business, when we wanted to do business with each other, when we're actually providing services to each other, right? You know, we've gotten to the point where, well, I think this doctor is probably going to be better for me because they look this way, and this doctor won't provide me the same service because they look that way. That's the point that we've got to this country. So what we said was, you know what? To get back to trusting ourselves, believing in ourselves, from an economic standpoint, we're going to have 3 pillars of vision, right? Stimulate our economy, make sure that we sustain our businesses through legacy growth, leaving it to our own, reinvesting in our own, shopping with our own, and then reinvesting that back into the community, right? Not just promoting business events, but actually reinvesting it back into the community through focus groups, educational forums, free workshops, things of that nature. Now, how we're going to do that? First of all, we're going to go out and hire someone like Menefee to come in and help us push our mission, right? Push our mission objectives, to empower, to guide, to promote, to enhance, and to do the collaboration for businesses who look like us, right? And we're going to do that through a series of seminars, leadership conferences, trainings, development initiatives, you know, partnership capacity building, you know, networking events, things of that nature. So this is our framework right here. This is our model of the Black Business Alliance. And you know how we got some of these things? We got it from some of our initial focus groups that we started. Because we started doing focus groups before we had a name. We just said, we're going to have some focus groups to just get some ideas on what we think we need in our community and what we need to do. And we started that about 3.5, 4 years ago. And this is what we came out of it with. So when we get that trust back, we start having a vibrant community, you know, through many ecosystems. We continue to do great work with USAADO and some of the outstanding people in this room. And not only are we going to do it in Connecticut, we're going to do it in other states, and we're going to be abroad soon. So I really, really appreciate you guys sticking with us through this abbreviated version of the program. But I thought it'd be a great segue into giving you guys a more in-depth insight into the Black Business Alliance and who we are, how we came to be, and where we're looking to go. All right? So if there are any questions, we'll field them at this time. And if not, I will turn it over to Emmanuel so he can go into the last session of the program for today. Yes, sir.
How well are you received or not received within the African American community with this initiative to help push the creation of business and so forth?
I am glad you asked that question. And I have been accused of being frank, no pun intended. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about it in this manner. In the beginning, we focused on our vision, and you talk to a small group of people who think the same way you do. And we didn't focus on galvanizing the entire community at once, like so many people try to do. So we started with a small group of people who think the way we think, and we put focus groups together. And as we grew and started marketing ourselves, you did get some naysayers that would say, oh, well, BBA, you guys, this has been done before. But this is why this organization didn't succeed. And I would kindly say, this has not been done before for a couple of reasons. One, because we have a piece of the community engagement that is where we're focused on. We're not going to get away from this is about the community, right? This is not about executive salaries. This is not about the number of contracts. This is not about, our primary initiative is to go get public funding. This is about selling what we're doing to like-minded people who believe in what we believe. And everything else tended to come towards us after we expanded, right? I've also had kickback on, oh, why are you calling yourself the Black Business Alliance? Well, what should I call myself? Why are we the only population who can't use that word in any organization? Everybody else uses it in their organization, right? To identify their associations and their groups. So, and at the end of the day, it has not, it has been the least roadblock in anything we're doing, our name. Obviously, the state of Connecticut didn't mind when they awarded us a grant to assist them to do access to capital outreach. Obviously, the couple of foundation grants that we received, the name wasn't a hindrance. Obviously, the number of emails and phone calls that I get or the staff get to learn more about us, even from out of state, the name did not hinder what we're doing. What our core competencies are is our intellectual capacity to galvanize people who think the way we think to move the needle forward. And that's what we're focused on, right? That's what we're focused on. And when you grow, perceptions tend to change and people tend to gravitate towards you for whatever reason, So that's sort of a general overview of some of the perceptions and some of the conversations that I've had based on us forming it and our name and things of that nature. So, any other questions?
I'll just another way of also answering the same question, but I think we've been received very well. One of the things that is actually a little bit more on that unique side of BBA than most of the other organizations that may have a constituency base that looks like us, but the objective is a little bit differently, is the fact that we do focus on the empowerment of Black business ownership. And I think that it's a little bit different than most other organizations because of because most organizations focus on something else. So they'll focus maybe on culture. There's a great organization in the Hartford area called the West Indian Club, and they have their mission, not to quote them, but it's more centered around the West Indian Caribbean culture, right? And yes, they have initiatives for businesses and so forth, but it's a little bit more cultural. I am actually another organization, I won't speak too much about, but National Black MBA Association. I'm the president of the Hartford chapter. I love that organization as well, but they focus a little bit more on corporate, and they focus on minority professionals that get a degree, but they usually end up going back into corporate America. And one of the things I know I talk to people about as well is when you think about the laws in this country, I always tell people it's like capitalist-bound country, and the laws are made for people who create tax dollars, those business owners. The law, if you look at the laws of this United States, it is made for business ownership. And a lot of people don't understand how to interpret the law or the resources that the law permits or doesn't permit for you to do certain things because you own a business. And so that combination is actually very powerful. But I say all that just to say is that I think that when I talk to folks about the BBA and its initiatives and kind of the vision that Mr. Frank Dixon has for the organization for 3 years, for 5 years, people are very positive about that, and they receive it well because there isn't a focus on that. There really isn't a lot of organizations out there that are looking to promote the ownership of Black business owners. And that's just real, I think, in this country. Would you agree?
100%. And the economic independence of business ownership, some of the things that we talk about all the time. So, and that's how we stay true to who we are. Focused on, having your own, growing your own, focusing on the inclusiveness, but not excluding anyone. Because at the end of the day, we have to provide the resources and underlying tools to focus on us. And people need to really understand that. And I have to explain that all the time. This isn't about exclusion. This is about our focus is on us, and our doors are open to anyone. But at the end of the day, it's about leaving a legacy to our kids, our grandkids, and getting that trust, back in our community. So I want to thank you guys again. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Harold.
Before you back off, could I put you or Guiliane in front of a group of people, African-American students at the University of Hartford, Brothers and Sisters United? The kind of stuff you're talking about is so inspiring. It ought to be at that level and perhaps at high schools. Do you do that?
Oh, yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Just let me know, and we'll put it on the calendar, and I'll come out, especially because you asked me. Everything's about networking relationships, right? I'll definitely come out and do that. So, all right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
One of our main speakers or participants 2 years ago, Mr. Chidi Ajebu, who is the CEO of Heritage Capital Markets, we invited him back, and he purchased his ticket. But unfortunately, he was to fly out, and I saw his ticket. He actually sent it to me via email. He was to fly out on Tuesday. He had asked me to book a hotel for him from 20th to 25th, but the American embassy gave him an appointment to come for visa on Wednesday. So his airline said, I guess he bought first class or business class. His airline said they were charging him about $3,000 to change the date from just, for a day. And so we started working on this last week, because when they wouldn't budge, so he asked us to see whether we can send a letter from here to the American embassy. So I contacted Lucy, who was our fantastic special event helper from the Commission on Equity and Opportunity down in Hartford, to see whether we can do it, but it wasn't possible. So, but he prepared some slides, and I kind of thought, out of respect for the effort he has put in to get here, that I would just go through the slide on how to access finance. He helps companies raise money, and on and on and on. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Like I said before we began this segment, Mr. Chidi Ajebu, who is the CEO of Heritage Capital Markets. He was also, Ronke talked about the Institute of being a chartered accountant. The premier body of accountants in Nigeria is an organization called the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Chidi was also the president, national president of that organization. We were with him 2 years ago. He was there. He really, really wanted to be here. He himself, like Eric and a few others, are not just in a position to talk about access to finance and capital, but they actually make it happen. He helps companies raise millions for all kinds of investments. He helps companies take them public so that they can be quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Just by way of full disclosure, I'm a non-executive director of his board also. So since he couldn't be here, I told him, well, I kind of know a little bit. If you're a director, you know a little bit of what goes on. So for having gone through the effort, he really wanted to be here, like I said, but because of a visa timing, he sent a slide, some PowerPoint slides. So I'm going to just run quickly through it. I know we've been around for a long time. Run through it and just emphasize some things. Some aspects of so his title is Assessing Finance for Africa. Some of the things there are things that we've gone over. The special assistant to the Minister for Investment, Trade, and Industries went over that. And by the way, I just checked my email. I got an email from the Minister basically saying thanks. He apologized he couldn't be with us, like I said. I got back to him and told him, the person he sent to represent him represented him very, very well. So he sends his thanks and so on. So those big issues, they're out of the way, like how big is Africa and all that, the opportunities. I will zero in on the opportunities also. We've talked about all that, the various presenters. I will zero in on the financing bit. There are all kinds of sources for getting financing. We had the SBA here to talk about getting financing from the United States perspective. Part of what Eric has, the panel did, and what Chidi was also invited to do, was to tell people who have ideas or who are in business here, who want to do business with Africa, sources of funding that are also available in Africa. Oftentimes there's this notion that it's all beggarly, there's no money in Africa, and so on and so forth. That's not actually true. I was talking with Frank some time ago. We were in Hartford. We stopped by the office of the Minority Construction Minority Contractor Council or something, construction council and all that. And they down the line in future will bring them, because there are projects you do, like in Nigeria I know of, upfront they kind of pay you like 50% of the, Eric is here, if I'm wrong, he can, contradict that. Upfront they give you 50% of like the cost of the project. That's a lot of financing, that's a lot of help, if you're a startup or if you're somebody who doesn't have a lot of money, but you built a track record of performance, or you have some unique product or some unique skills. So people need to know about that there are some of those kind of financing that exist for doing business in various African countries and also Nigeria. I will I'm just focusing on the financing side, the opportunities and all that. We've had quite a number of it. There are all kinds of sources. You have the multinational development banks. The multinational development banks. By that we mean the International Finance Corporation, the African Development Bank, the International, the IC, I've forgotten exactly what it stands for now, but it's all part of the ADB is separate, but IFC and ICA, they are part of the World Bank group. Now, the thing with these multinational development banks is that oftentimes they make funds available at very concessionary rates. They make funds available at very concessionary rates. You're talking about like 1%, 1.5%, 2%, and so on. And we need to know about these things and begin to explore them. There are all kinds of rate tapes and so on and so forth. And I'm going to make some comments which, some might consider controversial. Access to capital issues. You'll find out that most of the institutions through which money flows for financing projects and so on and so forth, there are at times deliberate, obstacles on the parts of African Americans and Africans. Some of those are historic. Some of those are not intentional. Some of those happen as a result of lack of effort on the part of a minority and African Americans, and some of those are just barriers that we need to break through. I was speaking with a friend recently who is a money manager with one of the big firms, and he was telling me kind of like, for you to get a license to be an investment advisor, you have to pay like $9,000 a year to maintain the license, whether or not you used it, and depending on the amount of funds under management. And I asked, are there any underwriters who are black-owned underwriting firms that you know? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, well, what it takes to get there is so much. Now, we need to kind of deliberately, consistently insist on breaking those barriers down. Because if you cannot do it, all the talk is just hot air, right? All the planning, if you cannot break into these barriers. You know, I belong to a group called Financial Executives International. International, yeah. Basically, you have to be like either an associate professor of finance, accounting, or full professor up, or a controller of a company of a certain size, or your own CEO and all that, in order to belong to that group. We used to have these meetings in Greenwich and Stanford and so on and so forth. So when I get there, many times I'll be the only black person in that room. So you come, you're chatting around, maybe networking reception. What do you do? You know, folks will tell you jobs, what they do, you never hear or see advertised anywhere. Right? You never hear or see advertised anywhere. And these are jobs that make millions of times, that make six-figure income. And then when you probe a little bit deeper, you find out that the uncle of the uncle or the cousin of the cousin, right, told me, and so on and so forth. Now, if you check, like if you wanted to be an investment advisor, right, you don't need a college degree, right? But you need somebody who will sign for you before you can take like the series exam, right? Why do you think it's made that way? Are you guys following? So there are gatekeepers, and we better, kind of wisen up to what's going on. There are gatekeepers, right? You don't need a college degree, but you need somebody to sign for you. And the person signing for you must be a member of the club. Are you getting me? It must be somebody that somebody else has let in, right? So that's how, by the way, some of the people you see playing golf when you're going to walk, that's how they got to be that way, right? That's how they got to be that way. Because then you set up these investment management firms. Then the golfing buddy of your uncle gives you like $100 million under management, right? You get like a fee of 2% of $100 million. How much is that? $2 million to manage the fund. What exactly do you do to manage the fund? Right? Then they tell you, oh, it's so hard. The trustees this, the trustees that. You buy bonds. There are some bonds that, 6%, 8%, and on and on. So if it's an 8% bond, you return 6% and you keep 2% in your pocket. So you invest the money in the bond and you get on with your life. So, but the difficult issue is being let in, right? The difficult issue is being let in. And if you look at the gatekeepers, both from the organizations that regulate accounting practice, to organizations that regulate securities trading, to the Federal Reserve Bank, correct me if I'm here, has there ever been an African-American chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank? No, if I'm wrong, let me know. Has there ever been any? Now, African-American, we've had somebody be the president of the United States, right? So some of these areas are so hard to get in. I have a young man I am mentoring, and at times when I'm going to some of those places, I'll take him along. Now, I kind of think he may be starting to get discouraged and all that, because oftentimes you go there, it's like me and him are the only, black persons, and he's doing the right things. So my point is, if you look at these multinational development agencies, they have a lot of money to give, but it's difficult to break in. At times you see all these people doing development projects, like into hundreds of millions of dollars, right? How do they do it? They do it because they get funds from these development agencies. And once you've done one, right, that's all it takes. And then it begins to go on. So the source is there, but it's difficult to get, but we need to keep pushing until we break down the barriers. Lassina and I have been, doing some work to try to create a lot of awareness among young people, in the younger Africans, African Americans, and all that, about the issues of personal financial planning and the importance of all these things and the need to stick with it until you actually break through. Because we do need access to those funds. If you don't have access to the funds, the scripture puts it this way. It says, money answereth everything. Money answers, all things, right? This is not Sunday and I'm not preaching, but, it's important. The financing issues are very important. And there seem to be systematic obstacles, when it comes to issues of finance. I'll just give this simple example. Yeah. I have a friend who used to be the CFO of the Denver Transit System. Now, they had $600 million in their pension funds. None of those $600 million was managed by any African-American owned firm. So he took $100 million from that money, split it into 3, and gave it to African-American owned firms to manage. What do you think happened? Now, huh? No, they didn't, hell was let loose, right? Hell was let loose, But fortunately for him, some of you know a guy called Mayor Wellington Webb. Anybody heard about the name Wellington Webb? He used to be the mayor of Denver, Colorado. So he's an African-American guy, right? So, but that still didn't stop my friend from getting a lot of heat from doing that. In other words, you can be the mayor, we don't care, but not touch the money, right? You can be the mayor, you can be the president, but when it comes to these gatekeeping organizations that deal with fund, they are still so jealously guided. There are some obstacles that are put on the way, but you got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until we break through into those. They do have a lot of funds, but we need to know they are there. We need to. Then Nigeria has national development banks. You have the Sovereign Wealth Fund. It has about $1.5 billion in it. Then you have an infrastructure bank and then Bank of Industry. Those of you who were here yesterday, Mr. Femi Edu, the special advisor to the Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment, mentioned the fact that he is on the board of the Bank of Industry. They give low-cost loans to people who have bankable projects with them. So at least we now know Femi, that bank is under the supervision of the minister. And the guy who is there now, by coincidence, is a friend. So if you have a project, anything that requires a BOI, we can help point you in the right direction. Then a lot of projects are being privatized. This is in Nigeria, and in some of those privatization, the government gives all kinds of concessionary terms to people. At times, people even, investors get the assets like get access to manage, and that's like government's counterpart funding, and then the investors are expected to come in and bring in more money to make the project work, and then they have some kind of profit sharing. I happen to know a state right now, they were supposed to be here, but for some reason they are not here. They have a number of projects like that where the government has put in a lot of money, de-risked the projects to a large extent, and they now want private investors to come in, finish it up. One example is they have a 30-story office building. They put in $10 million into it. They've gotten most of the building taken up by the likes of ExxonMobil and other reputable companies. But because they don't want to manage it as government, they now need investors to come in, finish up the building, and then discuss profit sharing and so on and so forth. So there are those kinds of opportunities in privatization. Now, reverse acquisition. Chidi is passionate about this. He talked about it passionately 2 years ago when he came. This is the idea of going into like the Nigerian market. It can be said of any other African country, Ghana and so on, by just buying into an existing business, successful business, and then that reduces a lot of the risks of just going into a fresh field and so on. Captain Highsmith was here yesterday, was here today, and he talked about how he grew his business. It included acquisition. So if you're interested in getting into Nigeria or the African market, that would be a good way too. There are some businesses that have been very profitable. Their owners might be transitioning for whatever reason. If the price is right, they will sell. They have a product already that has been proven in the market, and if you buy it, a lot of the risks of startup and all that will be taken away. Then private placements and bank loans. When individuals who have interest in a particular company can put their money into it, or bank loans from local banks. My caution, though, with Nigerian banks is that their interest rates are still very high. Their interest rates, we're talking about like 20-something%. So if you're taking the loan, you have to make sure that the business you're going into will earn about 40-50%. And there are not many businesses that give that kind of return. Now, Chidi, is a friend of USAADO, and if you have interest in like going into Nigeria, he will be ready to assist. He has helped so many companies take them to the stock market or raise funds in all kinds of industries. So we do have some of these resources, and it's up to you if you know somebody who is endeavoring to go into Nigeria. I'll now make a few comments, and we've had a lot. The gentleman from the Small Business Administration who came from Washington, D.C., Mr. Eugene Cornelius, he really challenged us. He talked about this big international conference he went to in South Africa, and every other constituency in America was there except the African American constituency. We need to begin to get up and do things. At times, we blame Caucasians, we blame, but at times, too, we have to acknowledge that some of these people take great risks, right? Some people take great risks in order to make wealth, and we shouldn't begrudge them that. But what we are saying is, if there are barriers, against us, we want those barriers down so that there will be a level playing field when it comes to issues of access to capital. If you haven't given us your email address yet, please do that. Like Vasina suggested, we will have to see a way of keeping this conversation on. I'm looking forward to 5-10 years time. Some of you will come to our conference in your private jets, right? So let me thank the board members who have, and the planning committee, Dale Gustafson, the vice chairman of the board, Hara Stansrum, the secretary of the board, John Akife, the treasurer of the board, George Anna Kinsley, a member of the board, Subira Gordon, who is the executive director of the Commission on Equity and Opportunity, which is an agency of the Connecticut General Assembly. She's on the board too, but she's not here. Frank Dixon worked with us from the beginning, the very early stages of planning this conference, and it's been a wonderful, let's put our hands together for, yeah. It's been a wonderful partnership with the Black Business Alliance, the Carrington Financial Services sponsors of the conference, Falcone, Dixon, also sponsors of the conference. We will keep in touch with you, and occasionally check our website. We're going to be posting materials and resources to help put into practice all these ideas we've been engaging with over this weekend. So once again, thank you very much, and I hand over to our moderator for the day.
I'm glad you did that, because I was going to say, as we rise to leave, we should give Emmanuel a standing ovation. He is truly a fearless leader, and we owe everything to him. Thank you, Emmanuel.
My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I do business as Light Source Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. And you spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media. And despite what people think, I am affordable. Give me a call. Let's plan your next video project and share it with the world on my social media television network. I promise you that you will have the attention of one person, me.